everyone, and welcome to Disney's Secret Truth Podcast. My name is Derek, and these are my colleagues, Jenna, Pearl, and Izzy, and we are the Exposing Team. Today our topic is the Disney original movie, The Emperor's New Groove.
The film was inspired by two special stories, The Prince and the Pauper and The Emperor's New Clothes. Now, if you don't know anything about these stories, let me give you a little background. The Prince and the Pauper is about two boys. One is the king, while the other is poor. They decide to change places to see how life is for the other person. There are many ups and downs for both sides. When the king changed to a poor boy, he found out that life is hard, but also there are people that want to help you. Like in this story, Miles wanted to help Edward, who was the king before he changed places. And when Tom became the king, he had the popularity and respect, but that he was lying about who he was. And he realized Edward was trying to tell people he was the king, and no one believed him, so Tom always felt bad. The Emperor's New Clothes is about an emperor, obviously, who gets tricked into buying a suit that is made from a fabric only smart people in the village can see. The emperor and his colleagues pretend to see the fabric since they were not smart. Everyone in the village went along with it until a child called out the emperor was naked. So those are the two stories the movie was inspired by.
That is really fascinating, but how do these stories compare to the movie?
Great question! For the story in The Prince and the Pauper, it is similar to The Emperor's New Groove because in the film, Kuzco, the emperor, and Pacha meet when Kuzco calls him in to ask a few questions about building his new summer home that is surprisingly going to be on the same hill Pacha, his family, and his village live on. During the same time, Kuzco has a dinner invite by his former advisor he just fired. At dinner, he gets turned into a llama when he drank a potion that was given to him for revenge by his ex-advisor. He is forced out of the castle while his former advisor is the emperor now, and Kuzco, the llama, has to live in royal. And now Yzma, the advisor, is experiencing life as the emperor and having more control. After a lot of ups and downs, Kuzco gets his power back, and his over-controlling ex-advisor is out of the picture. Now I'm going to compare the movie to the story of The Emperor's New Clothes. In the movie, Kuzco is tricked to have a dinner and especially a drink with his fired advisor. He drinks the drink and is turned into a llama. He pretends to still be the emperor even though his spot was taken. And also, he's a very selfish person until a village man named Pacha calls him out about all his flaws. But then he changed himself after hard work to be the emperor he is supposed to be after he gets his spot back, which he did.
That is awesome. Now let's talk about the setting of the story. The story is set in modern-day Peru, and it was set in around 1483 to about 1532. This was a time period the Inca Empire lasted from.
You are correct. It was based around in this time period. The Inca's culture was very interesting, aside from all the human sacrifices. In the Inca Empire, there wasn't any definite written language, so a lot of the stories were passed down orally. Their religion, like I said earlier, used many sacrifices for their multiple gods. These rituals were taken very seriously and were a staple part of Inca culture, until the Spanish arrived and discontinued the rituals. But they didn't show any of that in the movie, probably for the kids. Their art, music, and even their clothing was very unique. For music, the Incas would use panpipes, flutes, bells, drums, and another instrument made with an armadillo shell and 10 strings that looks like a guitar. Music in the empire always had a purpose, like military, agricultural, and religious reasons. Unlike in the movie where they used several pop themes that wouldn't come up for hundreds of years, the actual art they made was used metal, working with precious metals like bronze, silver, copper, and even gold. But the figures they made were small, and their best and notable art were their textiles, which were their best for its time. This was prevalent in the movie, and the style of art actually lined up with history. Speaking of textiles, the Inca clothing was made with llama and alpaca fur, and sometimes rare vincunas and guanacos. Clothing was also determined by your social class, so the royals wore colorful clothes with vincuna, guanaco fur, with feathers and gold strings, while townspeople wore plain clothes with cotton, alpaca, and llama fur, and the occasional colorful item, but not as much as the royals.
Now Jenna, how did all this incorporate into their everyday life?
Simple. Everyone in the villages of the Inca Empire was different. Your commoners would do all the hard labor. The people were placed into units and lived with their family, but also their unit and even their unit member's family, in a small boarded-up hut which had no windows, and the door was a small piece of leather or cloth that was woven. But they really didn't have a lot of time to relax, sleep, or even eat. Most of their days were spent in the units assigned fields, planting and picking crops. Most of the crops went to the merchants artisans, nobles, and emperor, but they did get a ration of food for them and their family. The commoners' daily life was very hard and tiring compared to other classes. They were treated like slaves. The women and children of the commoners would either be helping or stay home and making clothing, clean, and tend to the children.
Wow, that seems like a hard life.
Yeah, it was, but it gets better. The merchants and artisans were the next social class. They were considered a higher class of the commoners. Usually for the merchants, their daily life consisted of buying and selling goods. Artisans made pottery and jewelry for their nobles and the emperor. The nobles even had a daily life routine. But as you see as I talk about it, it's very laid back. The nobles actually owned land, but they had people which were the commoners who kept the land up. If the nobles did have a job, it was usually with the government. But most nobles' daily life included them trying to make themselves better, and they also brainstormed ideas to entertain the Sapa and his family, which was the emperor, because having good relationships with him was key. And last but not least, the Sapa, which was the emperor. His daily life consisted of people waiting and helping on him hand and foot. He also would create the rules and laws for the people.
The Inca Empire ruled as a monarchy. The ruler was the Sapa Inca. Everyone, including his wife, friends, children, and any other village member, reported to him with any questions they had. The Sapa Inca had a few people to help him run the village. He had an advisor which was named viceroy, military generals, tax collectors, a council of men, and governors of the 4 quarters the empire was divided into. The government was actually really good in the empire. There were lots of rules, like no cursing to the gods, no stealing, etc. But barely any crimes happened since the punishments were so harsh, like cutting your hands off.
Well, at least the punishments allowed for very little crime.
The royalty is pretty simple. The only royal person who had power was the Sapa Inca. He had total control and just had helpers that had to run everything by him beforehand.
That was pretty simple. Now let me tell you about the economics of the Inca Empire. In the Emperor's New Groove, the village people wear plain clothes they make with what they have, while the king wears fancy clothes with things made of gold. He keeps everything for himself and goes on to tear down an entire village to make himself a pool, or as he calls it, Cuscotopia. It doesn't matter to him what happens to the people as long as he benefits from it. As we know, the setting in Peru at that time had a great economy, the society worked together, and the surplus was divided and the remainder was given where it was needed. Work was required in exchange. They were given food, clothing, and education. They didn't use a form of currency, but instead they bartered and traded. Like us now, they have to pay taxes, but they gave cattle and crops instead. Families were given what they were needed to live comfortably based on the size of the family, and they were provided with homes and land to farm, though they didn't own the land themselves. In both scenarios, the village people worked together to survive, but in the Emperor's New Groove, Cusco the king took whatever he wanted because he was the king of the world.
That is very interesting.
But going back to the movie and inspired stories, what is the mood and tone?
I know, the movie The Emperor's New Groove is a dramedy. It has dark moral issues, but is displayed in a light-hearted, funny way as entertainment for children. It's also a slapstick comedy, because though they're being hurt, it's displayed in a funny way. Now let's compare the two inspired stories, The Prince and the Pauper and The Emperor's New Clothes. The Prince and the Pauper, on the other hand, was more serious because in the story, though they thought it would be interesting for the two identical boys to switch places, Tom, the pauper, is enjoying being prince while Edward is not enjoying being the pauper. He experiences the brutal life on the streets of London, teaching him a lesson. Now here's the mood and the tone for The Emperor's New Clothes. The Emperor's New Clothes is not as funny as The Emperor's New Groove, but is definitely more lighthearted than The Prince and the Pauper. Because in the end, though the Emperor knew he had been tricked, he still continued with his procession.
Now that we have all this information, did Disney tell the truth about the Inca Empire or not?
We think that Disney did tell the truth. Disney uses the Inca Empire with inspiration from multiple movies. We chose to use The Prince and the Pauper and The Emperor's New Clothes because we felt the movies taught very similar lessons.
All Disney movies are set in various time periods. While there is some factual information, they usually exaggerate it to make it funny for children and adding some more adult humor for the parents. In the real time period, the Inca Empire was a monarch. In the movie, Emperor Cusco was very selfish, and in real life they may not have been so selfish as to throw an old man out the window because he threw the emperor's groove off. But their power may have gotten to their head sometimes. The people in the villages obviously led different lives from the emperor, and this shows in the movie, and it just says the differences from then to now.
Well, it looks like we ran out of time today. We covered a lot today. Thank you guys so much for listening to our podcast, and we will see you back next time.
Bye!